The deception, the vast emptiness of space, held many secrets, but none more deadly than the one drifting silently through the Kepler Nebula. The vessel appeared to be nothing more than a derelict research ship, its hull scarred by look-like meteor impacts and energy weapon burns. Emergency lights flickered weakly along its sides, creating the illusion of a dying ship gasping for its last breath. Commander Thexvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Wrath, studying the mysterious object through the main view screen. His 6 arms moved gracefully across the control panels as his compound eyes analyzed the data streaming across multiple displays. The Valdorian Empire had been at war with humanity for 5 years, and in that time, Thexvar had learned to expect weakness from the young species. "Analysis complete, Commander," reported his science officer, Krell 9. "The vessel matches human registry patterns. Identification reads as UES Silent Dawn, a research vessel from their Colonial Science Division. No power signatures detected. No life signs. Hull temperature matches background space." Thexvar's mandibles clicked together in what passed for amusement among his species. Another human failure. The galaxy was littered with their broken ships and shattered dreams of expansion. In 5 years of conflict, humanity had proven to be nothing more than an annoying pest, easily swatted aside by superior Valdorian technology. How? Long has it been drifting? Thexvar asked, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never lost a battle. Based on its trajectory and the degradation of its hull markings, approximately 4 months. The ship appears to have suffered catastrophic system failure during some kind of research mission. The bridge crew shared knowing looks. Human equipment was notorious for breaking down at the worst possible moments. Their ships were held together with primitive materials and outdated technology. It was a wonder they had managed to spread beyond their home system at all. "Commander," called out Tactical Officer Zex Prime from his station, "we're detecting multiple hull breaches and what appears to be severe internal damage. Life support systems show as completely offline. This vessel is a tomb." "A coffin," laughed Communications Officer Vex 7. "A human coffin floating in space like debris." The term caught on immediately. Within minutes, the entire crew was referring to the Silent Dawn as the human coffin. The joke spread quickly to the other ships in Thexvar's battle group through the communication channels. Soon, even the captains of the escort vessels were making comments about the pathetic human coffin they had discovered. Thexvar commanded a formidable force. His flagship was supported by 8 heavy cruisers and 24 destroyer-class vessels. The battle group represented the cutting edge of Valdorian military technology, capable of reducing entire planets to ash. Finding a single derelict human ship was beneath their notice, except as a source of entertainment. "Should we destroy it, Commander?" asked Zex Prime. "Standard procedure calls for the elimination of all human military assets." Thexvar considered this. The ship was clearly no threat, but it might contain valuable intelligence. Human research vessels often carried data about their colonies, trade routes, and defensive positions. Such information could prove useful in planning future operations against the stubborn species. "No," he decided, "we will bring it aboard for analysis." The Intelligence Division has been requesting more examples of human technology to study. This coffin might tell us something useful about their pathetic capabilities. The order went out to the engineering teams. The Dominion's Wrath was massive enough to accommodate smaller vessels in its cavernous cargo bays. Bringing the human research ship aboard would require minimal effort from the ship's powerful tractor beam systems as the Valdorian fleet took position around the drifting Silent Dawn. The mood throughout the ships remained light-hearted. Officers continued to joke about the human coffin and speculate about how the crew had died. Some suggested they had frozen to death when their primitive life support systems failed. Others thought they might have suffocated when their cheap hull plating cracked under normal space pressure. None of them considered that the crew might still be alive. Deep inside the Silent Dawn, in sections that no Valdorian sensor could penetrate, systems that had been waiting patiently for 4 months began to respond to proximity alerts. Emergency protocols activated according to carefully programmed parameters. Hidden power sources came online with barely detectable energy signatures. In the ship's medical bay, advanced stasis pods that had kept their occupants in perfect suspended animation began their revival cycles. Captain Sarah Chun opened her eyes in the darkness and smiled. The Silent Dawn was not a research vessel at all. It was Project Lazarus, humanity's most classified military operation. For months, Chun and her hand-picked crew had been drifting through space, waiting for exactly this moment. Their ship had been designed to look like a derelict while housing some of the most advanced technology humanity had ever developed. Dr. Marcus Webb, the project's chief scientist, had spent 3 years developing the deception systems that made their warship appear as a helpless civilian vessel. Every scorch mark on the hull had been carefully placed. Every flickering emergency light had been programmed to create the illusion of system failure. Even the ship's heat signature had been modified to match that of a dead vessel. The plan was brilliant in its simplicity. Humanity could not match the Valdorian Empire in terms of raw military power. Their ships were smaller, their weapons less powerful, their armor thinner. But humans had something their enemies lacked: creativity and the willingness to take desperate risks. "Status report," Chun whispered as she climbed out of her stasis pod, her voice barely audible in the medical bay's red emergency lighting. "We are being tractored by a Valdorian flagship," replied Artemis, the ship's advanced artificial intelligence. "Fleet composition: 1 Dreadnought-class vessel, 8 heavy cruisers, 24 destroyers. Total enemy crew complement estimated at 47,000. Chun felt a familiar thrill of anticipation. The odds were impossible by any reasonable standard. 1 human ship against 33 Valdorian vessels. It would have been suicide for any conventional warship. But the Silent Dawn was far from conventional. Around her, other stasis pods were opening as her crew awakened from their long sleep. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, her tactical officer, sat up in his pod and immediately began checking the displays built into its lid. Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez was already moving toward the door, eager to check on her beloved quantum reactors. Dr. Webb himself was emerging from his pod with the careful movements of someone who had spent months planning for this exact moment. "How long until we're aboard their ship?" Chun asked. "Approximately 18 minutes until we enter their cargo bay," Artemis replied. "All systems are responding normally. Stealth protocols remain active. The enemy shows no awareness of our true nature." Chun nodded and activated her communicator. "All hands, this is the captain. Project Lazarus is now active. Report to battle stations immediately, but maintain stealth protocols. We have one chance to make this work." Throughout the ship, her crew moved silently to their positions. Every person aboard had volunteered for what many considered a suicide mission. They were humanity's best and brightest, willing to sacrifice everything for the chance to strike a decisive blow against the Valdorian Empire. In the engineering section, Dr. Webb was bringing online systems that existed nowhere else in human space. The Silent Dawn's quantum phase disruptors were based on theoretical physics that most scientists considered impossible. The weapons could literally phase matter out of existence by disrupting the quantum fields that held atoms together. No known armor could stop them because, technically, they didn't need to penetrate anything. The ship's defensive systems were equally revolutionary. Instead of traditional shields that deflected incoming energy, the Silent Dawn used quantum field generators to create pockets of altered spacetime around the vessel. Attacks would literally slide around the ship through folded dimensions, making it effectively invulnerable to conventional weapons. Quantum reactors online, Martinez reported from the engineering deck. All systems showing green across the board. We're ready for whatever they throw at us. In the tactical center, Morrison was studying the enemy fleet through sensors that the Valdorians couldn't detect. The ship's stealth systems didn't just hide their true nature. They allowed the Silent Dawn to gather detailed intelligence on any vessels within scanning range. Enemy formation analysis complete, he announced. They're arranged in a standard security pattern around us. Perfect positioning for what we have planned. Sean made her way to the bridge, where the main view screen showed the interior of the Valdorian cargo bay growing larger as they approached. Soon, they would be inside the enemy flagship, surrounded by thousands of hostile aliens who had no idea they were bringing death into their own ship. Artemis, begin final system checks, she ordered. I want everything perfect when we make our move. All systems optimal, Captain. Quantum phase disruptors charged and ready. Defensive fields prepared for activation. Enemy vessels targeted and firing solutions calculated. We are ready to show them what human ingenuity can accomplish. The Silent Dawn continued its slow journey toward the cargo bay, still appearing as nothing more than a dead hulk to the Valdorian sensors. But inside the ship, systems that represented the pinnacle of human achievement were reaching full operational status. The Valdorians had spent months laughing at human weakness. They were about to discover that appearances could be very deceiving, and that sometimes the dead could rise up to bite back. Asterisk the awakening, the Silent Dawn settled into the cargo bay of the Dominion's wrath with a soft thud that echoed through the vast chamber. Automated systems sealed the bay and began flooding it with atmosphere, preparing for the boarding teams that would strip the human coffin of anything valuable. Commander Thexvar watched from the observation deck as his engineers prepared to access the derelict vessel. The sight of the scarred human ship sitting in his cargo bay filled him with satisfaction. Soon, his intelligence teams would crack open this tomb and learn more about humanity's pathetic technological capabilities. Begin scanning procedures, he ordered. I want complete analysis of their systems before we send in the boarding teams. What the Valdorian sensors detected was exactly what Dr. Webb had programmed them to see. Dead computers, empty fuel tanks, cold reactors, and the lingering traces of a crew that had died months ago. The deception was perfect, right down to the false biosignatures that suggested decomposed organic matter in the crew quarters. Scans complete, Commander, reported Krell 9. The vessel contains standard human research equipment. Primitive computers, basic scientific instruments, and what appears to be experimental communication gear. Nothing of particular value. Thexvar was disappointed, but not surprised. Humans rarely created anything worth studying. Their technology was decades behind Valdorian standards, cobbled together from theories their scientists barely understood. Very well. Send in a team to collect data cores and any equipment samples that might be useful. Handle it as routine salvage. Inside the Silent Dawn, Captain Shun was watching through hidden cameras as Valdorian engineers approached her ship. The moment they made physical contact with the hull, proximity sensors would trigger the final phase of Project Lazarus. All stations report ready, she announced quietly. Dr. Webb, are the quantum disruptors fully charged? 100% operational capacity, Webb replied from his position at the weapons control station. We can fire at will. Martinez, what's our power status? Quantum reactors are running at full output. We have enough energy to level half this fleet and still have reserves for emergency maneuvers. Chon nodded and activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is the captain. In 30 seconds, we will demonstrate to the Valdorian Empire why they should never underestimate human determination. Stand by for combat operations. The first Valdorian engineer touched the Silent Dawn's outer hull with a scanning device. The contact was gentle, almost respectful, as if he were examining a museum piece. It was also the trigger that Artemis had been waiting for. Instantly, the ship's true nature was revealed. Hull plates slid away to expose weapon ports that had been completely invisible moments before. The vessel's profile changed as hidden systems deployed, and the quantum reactors reached full output. What had appeared to be a dead research ship transformed into something that resembled a mechanical predator. "Energy spike," shouted Krell 9 from his sensor station aboard the Dominion's Wrath. Massive power buildup in the human vessel. These readings are impossible. Commander Thexvar spun around to stare at his displays in disbelief. The sensor readings showed energy patterns that exceeded anything in the Valdorian database. The supposedly dead human ship was generating more power than some small stars. "All ships red alert," he broadcast to his fleet. "The human vessel is active. All weapons target that ship immediately." But it was too late. The Silent Dawn fired first. The quantum phase disruptor beam was invisible to normal sensors, but its effects were immediate and terrifying. The blast struck the Dominion's Wrath's primary weapon array, and the massive gun turret simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no flying debris, no fire. The matter that had composed the weapon was converted into its component atoms and scattered harmlessly into space. "Hull breach in Section 12, screamed the damage control officer. "But sir, our sensors show no weapon impact. The armor just ... Disappeared?" Thexvar stared at the readings in horror. 30 meters of reinforced hull plating had vanished as if it had never existed. What kind of weapon could do such a thing? His answer came as the Silent Dawn fired again. This time, the beam struck one of the ship's shield generators. The entire system, along with the surrounding hull sections, was simply erased from existence. 50 tons of advanced technology became a cloud of free-floating particles in less than a second. "Return fire," Thexvar ordered desperately. "All ships, concentrate everything on that vessel." The response was immediate and massive. 32 Valdorian warships opened fire simultaneously, filling the cargo bay with enough energy to destroy a small moon. Plasma bolts, particle beams, and guided missiles converged on the Silent Dawn from every direction. None of it mattered. The ship's quantum field generators created zones of altered space-time around the vessel that made conventional weapons useless. Energy beams curved away through folded dimensions. Missiles exploded harmlessly against barriers of twisted reality. The exotic defensive fields that Dr. Webb had spent years developing proved impervious to anything the Valdorians could throw at them. Asterisk. "Their weapons are having no effect," reported the tactical officer in a voice filled with growing panic. "The energy patterns around their ship are beyond our understanding." Captain Chun watched the enemy fire wash harmlessly over her vessel, like rain on a window. "Morrison, target their heaviest cruiser. Full quantum disruption." "Targeting the Death's Herald," Morrison confirmed. "Firing now." The beam that struck the Valdorian heavy cruiser was focused and precise. It carved through the ship's hull like a blade through tissue paper, but instead of cutting, it simply made matter stop existing. A perfect tunnel appeared through the vessel from bow to stern, so clean that crew members could look through it and see stars on the other side. The Death's Herald did not explode when its reactor core was erased. The massive ship simply lost power and began to drift, its hull integrity compromised by the impossible wound that had been carved through its center. "Impossible," whispered Thexvar as he watched one of his most powerful warships rendered helpless by a single shot. "What are they?" The answer came from Captain Chun herself as she opened a communication channel to the Valdorian fleet. Her voice carried the calm confidence of someone who held all the advantages. "I am Captain Sarah-chan of the United Earth. Ship Silent Dawn. For months, you have mocked human technology and called our ship a coffin. You are right about one thing. This is indeed a coffin. Unfortunately for you, it's yours." The Silent Dawn fired again, this time at 3 targets simultaneously. The quantum disruptors could split their beams and attack multiple vessels at once, a capability that no Valdorian weapon possessed. 3 more cruisers found themselves with critical systems simply erased from existence. Panic began to spread through the enemy fleet as ship after ship reported impossible damage from weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Valdorian commanders who had never known defeat suddenly found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't understand, couldn't fight, and couldn't escape. "All ships retreat," Dexvar broadcast desperately. "Emergency jump to hyperspace. Get us away from that thing." But retreat was not an option. The Silent Dawn's quantum field generators could do more than just defend the ship. They could also create gravitational anomalies that prevented other vessels from jumping to hyperspace. The Valdorian fleet found themselves trapped in normal space with a predator that seemed capable of rewriting the fundamental laws of physics. One by one, the mighty warships of the Valdorian Empire fell silent as their critical systems were selectively erased. The Silent Dawn didn't destroy them completely. That would have been wasteful. Instead, it systematically disabled each vessel by removing engines, weapons, life support, and communication systems with surgical precision. Within, and now see, our 33 of the galaxy's most advanced warships had been reduced to helpless drifting hulks. Thousands of Valdorian warriors who had considered themselves the masters of space sat in darkness and cold, trying to comprehend what had happened to them. Commander Dexvar found himself alone on his bridge, staring at displays that showed his once mighty fleet floating powerless around the human ship that had destroyed them. The vessel that his crew had mockingly called a coffin now sat in his cargo bay like a predator among its prey. "This is Captain Shun," came the voiceover. "The communication system. Your fleet has been neutralized. Your weapons are gone, your engines are disabled, and your life support will fail in approximately 6 hours. I suggest you use that time to consider whether the Valdorian Empire wants to continue this war." Chun paused, letting the implications sink in before continuing. "You thought humans were weak because our ships are smaller and our weapons less powerful. You were measuring the wrong things. Strength isn't about the size of your guns or the thickness of your armor. It's about the willingness to take risks, to try new approaches, and to never give up even when the odds seem impossible." The Silent Dawn began moving slowly through the cargo bay toward the exit, its quantum field still active and ready to defend against any desperate attacks. As it departed, Captain Shun delivered her final message to the defeated Valdorian fleet. "Tell your empire what happened here today. Tell them that humans don't just build ships. We build possibilities. We turn the impossible into the inevitable. And if you ever mistake our coffins for weakness again, you'll find out that the dead can be very dangerous indeed." The ship disappeared into space, leaving behind a fleet of the galaxy's most feared warriors sitting in darkness, contemplating the fact that everything they thought they knew about warfare had just changed forever. News of the battle spread quickly through the galaxy. The Valdorian Empire, which had seemed unstoppable just hours before, suddenly found itself facing a species that could make their greatest weapons useless with technology that bordered on the too miraculous. Other alien civilizations that had been cowering before Valdorian might began to look at humanity with new eyes. Perhaps these young upstarts weren't as weak as they had appeared. Perhaps there was more to them than anyone had realized. The Silent Dawn had proven that sometimes the most dangerous weapon wasn't the biggest gun or the thickest armor. Sometimes it was the willingness to think differently, to take risks, and to never accept that defeat was inevitable. Humanity had learned to turn their apparent weakness into their greatest strength, and the galaxy would never be the same. Asterisk.